Does history repeat itself? It's a question we ask whenever the world feels uncertain. Wars, politics, even economic crisis, we instinctively look for historic parallels. As the saying goes, history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. This week, I want to suggest that the Torah anticipated that insight in a profound way and thousands of years ago. Parsha Eikev opens with a single enigmatic word, Eikev. We usually translate as because, but it also means heal or last, and its root evokes something winding or circuitous. Could one word contain an entire philosophy of history? The Greeks saw history as an endless cycle. The Enlightenment imagined it as a straight line of progress. The Torah offers a third way. History moves toward redemption, yet along the way, it echoes itself. The same moral challenges return, but each generation is called to respond anew. This week, we'll follow that idea from classical rabbinic texts through Giambattista Vico and Isaiah Berlin to Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. Welcome to Madlik. My name is Geoffrey Stern, and at Madlik we light a spark or shed some light on a Jewish text or tradition. Along with Rabbi Adam Mintz, we host Madlik Disruptive Torah on your favorite podcast platform and now on YouTube and Substack. We also publish a source sheet on Sefaria, and a link is included in the show notes. This week's Parsha is Eikev, and we'll explore how the Jewish story is neither a circle nor a straight line. It is history that rhymes. Somehow, Rabbi, I feel like we've touched on this before, but I couldn't resist.
It's a good topic. I don't know if we have or we haven't, but it's a really good topic. Let's take it away.
And it's rare that I stop on the second word of the Parsha and go, that's it. That's what we're going to talk about. But here we are. The Parsha is called Eikev because it usually gets named after one of the early words in the Parsha. And our Parsha begins with V'haya Eikev. V'haya has a sense of future focus, and Eikev is enigmatic. So the Mitsuda Publications translation translates it as follows. In the future, as a consequence of your heeding these laws and your guarding and fulfilling them, Hashem, your God, will guard you for the covenant and the kindness that he swore to your forefathers. Everett Fox says, now
so the word is Eikev means as a consequence.
It's definitely, there's a quid pro quo, there's some sort of connection, and V'haya is something to do with the future. Everett Fox translates it, now it shall be. Again, it's a word that talks about timeliness, because that's how he translates Eikev, of your hearkening to these regulations by keeping and observing them, that Hashem will keep you for the covenant of loyalty that he swore to your fathers. So if you look at Targum Yonatan, the Aramaic translation of the Torah, it says, Vayahi chalaf, in the future as a consequence in exchange for. Rabbi, I think when I sell my chametz, or when I got married and I wanted to exchange the value of my ring, there's something called Chalipin, is there not?
That is correct. You learned about that in yeshiva, which is an exchange.
It's an exchange. You hold up a hat, you hold up a token, a handkerchief, and you chalif, you're machlif, you exchange
I'll
it.
tell you, I'll explain how Chalipin works. Chalipin is an exchange, but it's not an equal exchange. You give me your chametz, and I give you my pen. Your chametz could be worth $10,000. The pen is worth 50 cents, but symbolically, it shows that we're serious because we exchanged the pen. So Chalipin, lahaklif means to exchange.
So the Targum Yonatan says, in the future, that we got, as a consequence or in exchange for you heeding these laws, there really is a sense of a quid pro quo here, of some sort of causal relationships. That's the way he translates it. Rashi says as follows. He says, and the consequence will be, if ye hearken, the Hebrew text may be taken to signify, if you will hear the heel. Eikev also means heel, the bottom of your foot. If even the lighter commands, which a person usually treads on with his heels, which a person is inclined to treat lightly, ye will hearken to it. So now the plot thickens, because there's another problem besides the first two words of this verse. The other problem is that it says mishpatim. It doesn't say mishpatim v'chukim. So they're trying to figure out what is this consequence. And Rashi goes, you have an enigmatic word when we go out of the lane, so to speak, and say, no, Eikev has nothing to do with quid pro quo or causal relationships or a trade. It has to do with a body part, your heel, and it has to do with, as a consequence of you keeping even the lowly commandments which you might tread upon. We're really, I don't know if you can call this Peshat or Midrash, but definitely it's an ink block test. People are coming at it with different various theories.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's so great because it's the first word, it's the word after which the Parsha is named, and we have no idea what it means.
And that means it's going to get fun.
Right.
So the Ibn Ezra says Eikev because has the same meaning as Eikev, reward forever. He brings a verse from Psalms that says, Netiti libi la'asot hachicha la'olam Eikev. I am resolving to follow your laws to the utmost forever. And in the translation that Safiro gives, it's uncertain. The Hebrew is uncertain. So now it means some sort of reward, but kind of a destiny, kind of a reward clearly in the future. You know, the Psalms that he quotes is the utmost or forever. Very, very interesting that all of this baggage or nuance is being piled onto this one word.
It's fantastic. This is a fantastic word.
So in Sfaria, you can click on any word and a dictionary comes up. So in that dictionary, Eikev means consequence, gain, reward, end. Adverb as a consequence, because consequently, so there clearly is this causal relationship, this reward for proper behavior. It's future-oriented. When you say a causal relationship, it's something that goes from now to the future. Clearly a lot in this one word. And now we're going to go to a Ramban, Nachmanides, that I found to be just a kind of a journey through this word, connecting all of these different meanings that started me thinking of what is history? What is Jewish history? And I think as we read through it, maybe you'll also have that same feeling. So Ramban says Eikev means because. So also Eikev, because of that, Abraham hearkened to my voice. So he quotes a use of the word in Genesis with Abraham. Rashi says, if you will hearken even to the lighter commandments, which a person usually treads upon with his heels, those commandments is which a person is inclined to tread lightly, then God will keep his promise to you. And the commentators have said that the meaning of the word Eikev is that in the end, there will be a reward. So that was kind of like the last of the Ibn Ezra. Similarly, in keeping the ordinances of God, Eikev Rag, there is in the end great reward. So he quotes another verse. The verse here is thus stating, and the end, the ultimate consequence of your hearkening to the ordinances and of you observing them is that God shall keep the covenant and the mercy, and he will love thee. So I love this ultimate consequence. We are looking at the arc of history. And so Ramban now says this is correct, for in the sacred language, the beginning of anything is called Rosh, head. As it is said, Rosh, the beginning. Rosh Hashanah is now around the corner. That's the head of the year. So also the leader of the generation is called the head of the people. The head of the yeshiva is called the Rosh HaYeshiva. I put that in. Ramban did not. Similarly, the conclusion of any matter is called Eikev, heel, as the sacred language adopts these figurative expressions from the human body. And thus the head is the
very
beginning.
Interesting. And the heel is the end, right? That actually is fantastic, isn't it?
So now he is linking what Rashi said that I said he was taking like a left turn off the highway, and Ramban is saying no, there is something there that the heel is a body part that is used for the end. So we do have this kind of time element to Eikev. Scripture also speaks, says the Ramban, of the head and the tail. Of course, we all know that from Pirkei Avot. And Onkelos rendered the word Eikev as chalaf in exchange for, like chalef in return for your service. Onkelos thus made it an expression of roundabout, the end result of a series of events, derived from the verse and Eikev, the crooked shall be made straight. That is, the circuitous road which goes roundabout will become a straight, level path. So before we get to that unbelievably profound verse in Jeremiah, because we already mentioned Rosh Hashanah, now we're going to have to mention Simchat Torah, Hakafot, when we dance around. So, Rabbi, what he's taking in Chalipin is not simply an exchange, it's a
circle to
perpetual.
enclose, right?
It's a perpetual exchange. It's like the one of the Newtonian laws that energy is conserved. This is now becoming, the metaphors are just piling in and becoming one more fascinating than the other. But yes, let's get back to the verse in Jeremiah that the crooked shall be made straight. Again, this is a wonderful short story by Agnon that you all have to read. But basically, what it's saying is that in the end of days, all these circuitous pathways that we've taken, all these detours that we've taken, all these compromises that we might have made, everything will be straightened out. Again, Jeremiah is talking about end of days. So and now you can see why I'm reading history and I'm reading an insight into Jewish history from here. The Ramban continues. He uses other metaphors for hakafa, Eikev being surrounded. He says, the verse here is thus stating, according to Onkelos, and it shall come to pass that the effect caused by your hearkening to the ordinances and your performing them will be that God will keep his covenant with you. He has explained it well, says the Ramban about Rashi. A similar expression is biglal, for the sake of this thing, which means on account of, from the word vigalu, and they rolled the stone. If you hear the word Gilgal in there, you're not off the mark. And he says, these are expressions of rolling and circling. Therefore, they called Jacob Yeshurun from the root yashar, straight and upright, because the opposite of the deceitful one is he who is upright. So now we're getting into the moral arc of history.
Now that's different. A circle is different than being upright. You said a circle is more about this perpetual movement. Upright is kind of that there is a direction, and this is upright.
I'll go one step further. We started by talking in the intro about the Greeks who thought everything was cyclical. Everything just repeats itself. And maybe the rationalists like Descartes and others who looked at history and said everything was a straight line. Here, I am going to take a little bit of a liberty with deceitful is the opposite of yashar in the sense that it's not straight. that it wiggles. It goes serpentine, if you will, from that great movie called The In-Laws. It's not direct. It can be deceitful, but it can also be the ugly truth of the way we plod through life. And that, I think, is the dichotomy that the Ramban is now adding to the baggage. Similarly, the end part of the foot, called Eikev, as it is said, and his hand sees Eikev, the heel of Esau. So now we're bringing it back home. Yaakov grabbed Esau's foot, and that's why he got his name. But his name is also, in a sense, because he was deceitful, sold the birthright, so forth and so on.
Yeah, I mean, that here, and the Ramban is always well known for that. What's the connection between the Haya Eikev Tishme'un, the beginning of this week's Torah portion, and the story of Esau and Jacob and holding on to the heel? It's the same story.
And now, a word from our sponsor. If there's one thing we value at Matlik Podcast, it's reading texts and talking about them. That's why I'm excited to share something I created called Voice Gift Play. It fits in the palm of your hand like a remote control and clips onto any book. It's inspired by those old school museum audio guides, but this is personal. Voice Gift Play stores up to 10 hours of audio across 999 numbered recordings. You simply enter a number to record a comment, memory, or explanation, and enter the same number to play it back. It's perfect for B'nai Mitzvah practicing their laning, capturing Grandpa's favorite tune, or recording Chad Gad Yar in a voice that matters. Go to voice.gift. That's www.voice.gift, and use code MADLIK for 15% off. Thanks. And now back to our podcast. So I'm going to make an argument that all of these words are going, and concepts are being thrown into the cholent of Jewish historiography. In other words, what appears straight can sometimes be crooked. What appears aimless is going towards some future goal. What seems unintentional is intentional. It's just he's bringing a lot into this. And I do believe, though, that he feels that the Eikev, if you look at it even in our verse, it's saying because through better or worse, through thick or thin, through direct or indirect progress, you have kept those commandments and have reached this point in history, God will be will be loyal to you. So he says, so also is the expression, they came upon him ba'akifim, meaning with circuitous and subtle arguments. The word akivim as these two letters, the vav. So he's really bringing it full circle. If you think that the arc of history has a morality to it, what ultimately he is, I think, intoning is the fact that you get to the end. It's not quite the ends justify the means, but it is the fact that to get to the end, it's not always a straight path. And the straight path might not get you to the end, but the circuitous route that is the history of the Jewish people will get you there. I just find it's a totally amazing Ramban. And
of course, true. The Ramban lived through a very difficult period in Spain when the Jews were challenged. He participated in a famous dispute with a Christian in 1263. He understood about the circuitousness of Jewish history.
And we're not going to get into it. We've covered it so many times before, but the Ramban is the one who also championed Ma'aseh Avot Siman Labanim, that what happens to previous generations gets repeated later. Rabbi, you and I were hearing a lecture from Shai held this last Erev Pesach, and he said something from Tehillim that really had my mind spinning. In Tehillim we say, Malacha hayam kitanus hayarden li what is with you, the sea? That means the Red Sea splitting. and the Yarden, the Jordan, when the Jews were going into the Promised Land. So even the splitting of the Red Sea was a kind of a prequel to the splitting of the Jordan. So really, Jewish history does repeat itself, but each time it's a different and unique situation.
Yeah,
And I
very
think
good.
that's what he meant by Maaseh Avot Siman Labanim. So, I mean, to give you that 60,000 feet review of history in terms of what I think the consensus is, the Greeks, especially Plato, the Stoics, and Polybius, held cyclical views of history, while the Hebrew Bible is distinctive in insisting that history moving forward towards a goal, creation, covenant, redemption. What is unique about the Torah is not simply that it combines linear and cyclical time, but that recurring historical patterns occur within a purposeful historical journey. And I am going to be arguing that in this kind of one Ramban, you kind of find it all.
Yeah, well, that's why the Ramban is so great. You know, he kind of is a collector of material, but he also has a strong point of view himself.
So recently, I've been rediscovering or discovering Jonathan Sacks because I think that we on Madlik tend to bring in contemporary thinkers and stuff, and I think Sacks does as well. This is what he writes in his introduction to Covenant and Conversation in Genesis. He said, according to many anthropologists and historians, a quite new and different form of time was born in ancient Israel. Often this is called linear time. I prefer the phrase covenantal time. The Hebrew Bible is the first document to see time as an arena of change. Tomorrow need not be the same as yesterday. There is nothing given, eternal, and immutable about the way we construct societies and live our lives together. Time is not a series of moments traced on the face of a watch, always moving yet always the same. Instead, it is a journey with a starting point and a destination, or a story with a beginning, middle, and an end. Each moment has meaning which can only be grasped if we understand where we have come from and where we are going. This is time not as in nature, but as in history. So this is a thought very similar to Chaim Yerushalmi, that the Jews, because they saw time differently, they actually made history differently. It was a living history. History was a part of a memory and really a part of our ritual. Another example that is brought, I saw something by Ishmael Shosh, and he says, like Moed. No, Ohel Moed is a tent of meeting. But the Jews, what he says is Judaism replaced nature with history. So Moadim used to be agricultural holidays based in fact, in nature, in the material world, and Jews made it into history. So Passover became the Exodus story. Shavuot, which is the first grain harvest, became the giving of the Torah. It's a fascinating way of looking at how we treat history.
Of course, but it's history as memory. It doesn't matter whether the sea split. That's not what it's about. It's about the fact that we remember that the sea split.
And as I said in the beginning, we use that as a paradigm and a lens to understand what's happening to us in the present. And it becomes a part of our present kind of vocabulary. And I think that's a little bit what happens at the Seder, when we have to say that we have to think of ourselves as though we have left Egypt, but we are still we. So I want to introduce our listeners to a thinker from the 1700s called Giambattista Vico that I came across through Isaiah Berlin. And he saw history also not as a straight line of progress, but as a dynamic spiraling journey. What he called it was corsi e ricorsi, a dance of rise and fall, creation and decay. And he really was unlike the Enlightenment thinkers who believed only in inevitable progress. Vico thought history advances through recurring patterns, not circles, but spirals. And what intrigued him to Isaiah Berlin was, first of all, that every age has its own way of evolving. You never go back to where you started at the beginning, even though there is this cycle, and that's what makes it a spiral. And then the other thing that is fascinating, as an aside, he said all of this applies to everybody except the Hebrews. And most people think that he was protecting himself from the Roman Catholic Church. It was such a radical idea that of all the people that he spared history as a spiral was the Jews. And
Well, that's
I'm
pretty
arguing
funny.
that that's exactly who he was talking about.
That's amazing.
But anyway, what Isaiah Berlin loved about it was that it challenged a fight against monism, where there's only one single objective truth or perfect system for how humans should live. Isaiah Berlin was terrified of monism because he believed it inevitably led to authoritarianism and utopias that justify violence. So there's a little bit of relativism here, but what it's saying is every nation goes through their own corso ricorso, they take, in the case of the Jewish people, we have creation, we have Genesis, we have Exodus. We take these concepts, these benchmarks, and we recycle them and we move forward without leaving them behind. And he found that to be extremely insightful. But what I could not really believe is the two kind of theories that Vico had. One was called verum factum principle, and it says humans can truly understand society and history because we made it ourselves, whereas only God can fully understand the natural physical world. Isaiah Berlin felt that he really was creating sociology, economics, the human sciences, so to speak. And what Vico was arguing is that Pumpverkehrt. We humans can understand human history better than anything else because we live it and we make it. It is truly ours. And I think that takes that Eikev concept where it's a part of the human body, but it's something that we can truly understand how we meander through history, taking a left and a right turn. The other thing he argued for was fantasia. Vico argued that to understand the past, we cannot use mathematical formulas. We must use active, empathetic imagination, fantasia, to enter the minds of past cultures. Berlin saw this as the true birth of modern social sciences, cultural anthropology, and genuine historical sympathy. It's just truly amazing. The second thinker that Berlin loved was Herder, and Herder did talk about the Jews. And Herder was a Lutheran minister, but he was German, and he argued for the emancipation of the Jews, but he also argued for the return of the Jews to their promised homeland, because again, he saw every society doesn't need to become universal. It needs to find that which is particular about it, those prisms, that mythology, and build on it. And language was very important to Herder. And if we've proved anything today by using one word, Eikev, and looking at all the baggage that it has, we've proven the point that different words can trigger different results. But I think really there is something unique about the Jewish vantage point of history, and I think it's self-fulfilling. It truly is our best guarantor that, as our verse says, Eikev, because we have remained loyal to this evolving historical narrative, we will survive. God will keep his promise to us. I just love this insight about humans can understand history better than anything else because we live it.
I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, it really, yeah, you end here with Yerushalmi again. It's really Yerushalmi's notion that history is what you live. It's not what happens to you, but it's how you live.
And it gives us a whole new, I think, toolkit for when we study our texts, how we go through that layered approach of commentary and commentary and commentary. We're actually looking at concepts that were created and meant something in one age and will mean something else in another age and will mean something still more for our children's children. And we need to take the time, as Vico argued and Herder argued, to understand what it meant at all of those different periods, to be able to process it and to be inspired by it and to be guided by it. And that, at the end of the day, is this kind of Chalipin and this hakafot and all of these wonderful words and language that we came across today.
Fantastic. This is really, really good. We're ready for Eikev in Westport.
We're ready for Eikev. We're ready for Rosh Hashanah, for Simchas Torah. We're really, we can go on vacation.
And Chalipin, what do you mean? We're ready to sell our chametz. Fantastic. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. This is great. I will look forward to next week on Shat Fred.
Shabbat Shalom. See you all next week. Here's a question I invite you to consider. If history truly does rhyme and is created by people rather than impersonal forces, what role do each of us play in writing the next chapter? I'd love to hear from you.